I listened to it actually for the first time from beginning to end out in the Utah desert, full blast in the car. And the most remarkable part of that was the ovation from the audience gives you chills.
It was jubilation. Because of that album, all of a sudden, the country and eventually the world knew that Judy Garland was back.
Welcome to If This Hall Could Talk, a podcast from Carnegie Hall. I'm your host, Jessica Vosk, and in this series, we'll look at the legendary and sometimes quirky history of the Hall. From momentous occasions to the eclectic array of world-renowned artists that have taken to the Hall's stages, in each episode, we'll explore unique items from our archives collection and travel back in time to relive incredible moments that have shaped the culture we live in today. For this episode, we didn't have to dig very deeply to find one of Carnegie Hall's most prized possessions: Judy Garland's signed album cover from her groundbreaking 1961 concert at Carnegie Hall. People who were in the audience that night described the show as, quote, the greatest night in show business history. That I'm jealous I wasn't there. And the recording does not disappoint.
It just was like that time period when those kind of orchestras had that big, beautiful sound.
The live recordings in the hall just sound fantastic. It just captures that ambiance.
When you listen to it, you actually feel a part of it.
The album went straight to number 1 on the Billboard charts, staying on the charts for over a year and winning 5 Grammy Awards. The story leading up to the album gives us a window into the magical, mysterious, and magnificent life of Judy Garland.
I'm so excited, my goodness.
Including the great challenges she faced, the bravery she had, and how this extraordinary concert and album came to be. So come with us as we drop the needle on the record and venture back to this historic night. While her quest as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz may be how she's most widely known today, Judy Garland's personal journey and her road to that historic night at Carnegie Hall is a timeless story of redemption. Throughout this episode and series, we will spend some time just listening together, really hearing the music we're speaking about and experiencing the magic and wonder of it. And stick around. You'll hear from Gino Francesconi, Carnegie Hall's founding archivist, on how the signed album came to hang on the wall of the Hall's Rose Museum. But first, let's get to the concert. It was memorable, it was groundbreaking, but why? To answer that question, we have to start at the beginning with Judy Garland's life. And few people know as much about her story as John Fricke does.
I always say that I'm very lucky to, at age 5, to have fallen in love with Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz. They became a passport to my life that certainly you don't imagine when you're 5 years old.
John Fricke is all Judy, all the time. He produced Emmy Award-winning documentaries, and he wrote books on her, and he even received a Grammy nomination for his album Notes. He is simply the Judy Garland expert.
These things choose us. We don't choose them. All of a sudden, that lightning hits you, and nobody was better at tossing her on lightning than Judy was.
when you're smiling, when you're smiling.
I can understand this feeling because Judy Garland is one of my greatest inspirations, because as a woman who loves to be in entertainment, as a woman who loves comedy, as a woman who loves a multi-hyphenate, she was all of those things. She paved these paths that never existed, which I'm sure was very difficult because I find myself doing the same. It's the thing about being a creator. You think it's this great idea until 2 seconds later, you think it's the worst thing you've ever thought of. And the fact that she was able to do that on her own is probably the thing that inspires me the most. When Judy came to perform at Carnegie Hall in 1961, she was just shy of 39 years old.
She had lived several lifetimes in that small period of time.
Known around the world as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, Judy was loved by millions of people. But it's not easy being a child star.
This is a woman who started to work on the vaudeville stage when she was 2 years old, with increasing bookings in vaudeville with her two oldest sisters, the Gum sisters, because the family name was Gum.
Now you will see us dancing and singing numbers by the Gum sisters, not the Wrigley sisters.
Judy, at age 10, 11, 12, was becoming the focus of the act because this was a little girl who, at 12, was compared vocally to a 30-year-old woman, a 30-year-old woman who sounded, when she sang, like she'd been hurt.
The night is bitter, the stars have lost their glitter, the winds grow colder.
Judy was signed by MGM at the age of 13, and she didn't even have to do a screen test. Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, hired her on the spot. And while it was remarkable, a profound turning point in Judy's life, it also set the foundation for decades of relentless work.
That began 15 years of employment by MGM. And in those 15 years, she made 28 feature films. She recorded 80 singles for Decca. She did 200 national radio shows. She did 3 Army camp tours for servicemen during World War II. She went on an all-star Bond tour across the country. The woman worked and worked and worked. And in 1950, she was no longer cost-effective for MGM because she had made 2 hit movies in 1948, one each in 49 and 50, but that wasn't enough per her contract, and she had been pretty much worked into the ground. All of that compounded by the fact that she was 4'11", they wanted her to be 95 pounds, so she was prescribed diet pills and sleeping pills to counteract the diet pills. Now, this wasn't done maliciously, because nobody knew what dangers there were in those new modern miracle drugs that curbed your appetite and enabled you to get a good night's sleep. Virtually everybody in Hollywood was on them on one level or another. But Judy became dependent upon them because of always feeling she had to prove and reprove herself.
I don't know how to count this one. I could cry salty tears. Where have I been?
When you start so young, it's difficult to know who you are. And Judy was always being put in a position of having to show she could do what was asked of her, be who was asked of her. And that can be hard and lonesome.
I mean, again, everything they could have done to destroy a girl's self-confidence came along at that time. Also, the great tragedy for her, personal tragedy, was that 6 weeks after she signed with MGM, her father died. And he was the one closest to her. Her mom was kind of a no-nonsense, advance, never retreat, let's go got to get the girls, got to do the show. The father was, put it this way, Liza Minnelli, Judy's oldest daughter, years later asked Judy how she felt when, at age 13, her father died. And Liza said Judy thought for a moment, and then she looked at Liza and she said quite simply, I thought, now nobody's on my side.
I believe in doing what I can.
Again, the vulnerability, the depth of her emotions, the soul, the heart, all those things that made her Judy Garland and made her incomparable and made her great, along with the humor and the intelligence, all of those were things that made her less capable of coping with day-to-day life.
The more you love a man, the more you put your trust, the more...
By the time we get to 1961, Judy had been worked to the bone, physically and emotionally.
No matter how bright you are or how intuitive you are, when you are worried that nobody really loves you for yourself, that's a lot of burden to carry. At the same time, you're doing 8 shows a week or making a movie or doing a TV series or trying to be a working mom. In an era when working mom was not a very commonly understood thing.
Wanted to have me near.
Being a woman and in the acting and performing world since childhood can really do a number on your sense of self. I can relate.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky.
There are so many expectations that are not business and career oriented, and so many expectations that tie into that because I'm a woman. And that's very different from the male perspective, especially in our business. And it's hard when you're in a position where you're doing a show or you're working for a show and you're the outspoken one and nobody wants you to be that way. But I still feel very strongly about women and women's rights and advocating for ourselves in a way that I, again, admire about somebody like Judy Garland. Because even though struggles aside, she was able to be the boss. And that's something we don't often see. And since Judy was always being pushed, nobody was taking care of Judy.
Just can't get my poor self together. I'm weary all the time. The time.
They were exploiting Judy Garland. She was being chased for bills at hotels from places she'd stayed while she was doing concerts. It's like, no, that she had managers to take care of that. Where were the managers? Where was that money?
By 1961, Judy was in the worst shape of her life.
Alone, together.
Gino Francesconi is the founder of the Rose Archives.
She was near death. She had hepatitis, and the doctors said, you may die, and if you live, you may never sing again.
We're not too proud to cling.
But Judy never gave up.
Judy Garland was a name, and her highs and her lows were equally thrilling to the media.
She'd always been in the public eye from the time of The Wizard of Oz, if not before. And then all the highs and the lows in her life, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse, the near-death experiences, and always trying to come back and succeeding.
She kept touring, performing, giving more than she had. And on April 23rd, 1961, in a wild turn of events, Judy gave one of the best concerts of her lifetime at Carnegie Hall.
You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it.
The night before the concert, Judy did everything she could to take good care of herself. Together with her husband, she spent the night at a hotel, away from the kids. She didn't need to be out on the town. She just wanted some peace.
So she and Sid checked into a hotel, they played cards, they watched TV, until Judy got tired enough to fall asleep early on Sunday morning. She slept, good night's sleep, and got up and went to Carnegie Hall. She had a police escort. A couple of the fans who were waiting for her in front of Carnegie Hall saw the policeman escorting the limousine around the corner to the stage door on 56th Street, and they were savvy enough to know it's got to be Judy.
Mention of your name sends my heart reeling. You know you made me love you.
Gino Francesconi, founding archivist at Carnegie Hall, recalls the night of the concert.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits, putting on the ritz.
It was Sunday night when Broadway is closed. And so all the stars on Broadway, Carol Chaney and Julie Andrews and Ethel Merman and Lena Horne and Lenny Bernstein with Lauren Bacall. I don't know who bought a ticket.
Julie Andrews, Richard Burton, Roddy McDowall from Camelot, Anna Marie Alberghetti from Carnival, the two kids playing Liesl, the boy playing the messenger, the 16 on 17 going on Teens for Sound of Music were there, Comden and Green were there, Rock Hudson had flown in from the coast, Tony Perkins, Hedda Hopper had flown in from the coast, Harold Arlen, Alan King.
Kathleen Sabagal is director of the Rose Archives and Museum at Carnegie Hall.
I read Mort Lindsay's obituary, and he mentioned that Benny Goodman was there and Rock Hudson was there, and that he's waiting for her to walk out, and she's just standing like in the wings, and he's like, is she gonna come out? Is she gonna come out? But he said, she was the consummate entertainer and she knew what she was doing. She was just waiting for the perfect moment to go out there and greet the audience and start the show.
You need to hear the audience just erupting in a roar. At one point, she sees Harold Arlen, and she tells him to stand up and take a bow.
Harold Arlen, stand up.
And then her banter back and forth with the audience. She was very comfortable with them. And to see this transformation of her when she walked out and to hear her talking with the audience.
We do practically all of his music all the way through the show. There is no better music. You know, of course, that was Mr. Harold Arlen who wrote.
Composer of Rainbow, Man That Got Away, Come Rain or Come Shine, Stormy Weather, all of which were in the concert rundown that night. And Harold sat down, and of course, he knew the king and his wife, and Alan looked at his wife and said, Harold Arlen, can sit on the aisle. It's
I
okay.
think after all of
And
that, it's
Alan
nice
told me the story. He
to
said Harold
calm
looked at
down.
him. We were talking, and Harold said, have you seen Judy? And Alan said, no, I haven't seen her. I just talked to her. And we all heard she was in great shape again, but there was always this nervousness because, again, you wanted her to be happy. You wanted her to be a success. And he said she came out, that great overture. He said that's show business. That is show business.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing.
And she launched into When You're Smiling. And after the chorus and the special material by her mainstay Roger Edens, she went into that strut tempo on the last reprise of it, where she would do step, touch in tempo, walking from the back of the stage down to the front. And as she did this, and the energy and the electricity just grew and grew and grew in the audience, Harold Arlen looked at Alan King and said, I think we're in good shape tonight, which I love.
The whole world smiles with you.
And again, the overture alone, Time magazine, in a tongue-in-cheek but very complimentary review of the concert the next week, said, she walked on and without opening her mouth got what it takes Renata Tebaldi minutes of Puccini to achieve, a standing, screaming ovation that went on and on. You know, everybody was in her corner right from the first moment. And she got 4 more standing ovations across the rest of the second act after each of the encores.
It was just, number one, an extraordinary moment, and number two, that it was recorded is just incredible. You know, when she sings Over the Rainbow,
Someday I'll wish upon a star,
which is the last piece before her encores, and she walks out and the audience is just getting hoarse from yelling, and she goes, I know, she goes,
I know. I'll sing them all, and we'll stay all night.
I'll stay all night and sing them all.
I don't ever want to go home. I never will.
You know, she says, I don't ever want to go home. And that was a really magical moment, truly. Many consider it actually to be the high point of her career.
And that was the extent of it. It just was a love match. She gave love to the audience. They gave more back to her, which enabled her to give more back to them. It was cyclical. Tony Bennett said Judy taught him that the more you give an audience, the more you get in return.
Judy played for 2 hours with a tiny intermission, and the crowd went absolutely nuts. Applause, when you're a performer in general, is a drug. And what it does to your brain is probably what a drug does to the serotonin and dopamine in your brain. See, I can only imagine, number one, if all of the applause were still kept on the record, it would be 2 times as long. But it really is a drug. I mean, it's really this addictive thing. And you want it so badly because it's such an amazing feeling to have, because that means you've captured an audience. And you were able to get your feelings that you have in that certain moment through song placed onto an audience of people to make them feel a certain way. And to me, that is next level. There is no feeling like it. The applause, the cheers, the love, the excitement, the sheer relief that Judy, the young girl from The Wizard of Oz, the woman from Meet Me in St. Louis, the consummate performer, was back.
You're nearer than my head is to the pillow.
When she died, a British writer wrote an appreciation piece and said, "You watched in astonishment at what she was doing on stage in front of you. You asked for more, and you were astonished that she was able to give it. And then you asked for more again, and she still gave it to you." Judy Garland inspired deep love and deep caring and inspiration in all the people who listened to her and really heard her, and she does it to this day. That was her great gift.
Then the ivy to the wall is nearer than the winter to the fall is. Leave me, but when you're away, you'll know you're nearer. 'Cause I love you so.
It's one of the most iconic concerts in Carnegie Hall's history, and the one that people talk about so much, and as Gino hinted, such a devoted fan base.
Archivist Rob Hudson.
I mean, how many other concerts can you think of where people have recreated the exact concert as many times? You listen to the recording, you get a sense for it. That's when, it was paced like a show, like a real, cabaret act. There's, highs and lows and pacing, and it was just really done well.
So how did America view Judy Garland after Carnegie Hall? It was like everybody went out and bought that album.
It's one thing to have had this phenomenal concert, but the fact that it was recorded is what makes this concert utterly timeless.
By the end of July, they had the album in stores, the real album in stores. It sold over 100,000 copies, $1 million worth of albums in the first few months, $4 million worth of albums in the first 2 years. It was on the charts for, depending on whose scale by which you go, either 93 or 96 weeks, starting in late summer 1961. It went to number one, I believe, in September. Its competition for number one, which it kept overreaching, was the Elvis Presley soundtrack for Blue Hawaii and the original Broadway cast album of Camelot. Again, two to beat, as it were. If you lived in towns where she appeared in 1960-61, you knew. If you read press reports, it's like, oh, she's back. If you read Shana Alexander's glorious article in the June 2nd, 1961 article of Life, and in the magazines that came out that fall, and in early 1962, Judy Garland was, after being written off completely, the biggest star in the world.
Could this thing last? But the age of miracles hadn't passed, for suddenly I saw. Now that it's your birthday, I don't know what to do.
Curious how the signed album got to Carnegie Hall's archives? Here is Gino Francesconi, who personally collected many of the hall's artifacts, on how the flea markets just weren't cutting it anymore.
It's really amazing when, in the beginning, before the internet, you had to go to all the flea markets. And sometimes you would spend an entire day going to a flea market, going to all the dealers and finding nothing, And, I mean, I say finding nothing, but at least we were getting the word out that we were looking for stuff. That was the biggest issue Carnegie had with collecting all this stuff, the assumption on people's part that we had warehouses full of treasures, you know? So when eBay started, it was a godsend because now suddenly you let your fingers do the walking. And I no longer had to go to flea markets. And instead of going to New Jersey, I was hearing from people in Spain and Kansas City. And one day there was the album that was autographed, and it had a reserve of $850. And I immediately went online to see if I could find Judy Garland's autographs to see if this was legit. And there were so many different autographs. And I thought, why isn't anybody else bidding on this? I mean, Judy Garland collectors and fans are as dedicated or as passionate as any other fans and collectors on the planet. And I thought, where is everybody, you know? And at one point I thought, I'm going to suck it in and just do it. And I bought it. And it arrived. And thank goodness, you know, I mean, you learn in the autograph business if something is dedicated to John Smith loves Sophia Loren, that's actually less valuable than if it's just Sophia Loren, best wishes Sophia Loren, unless John Smith was a famous explorer or something. You know what I mean? So the fact that it just says Judy Garland on it makes it unique.
Having that album in the museum signed is wonderful.
To say it swept the pop music category in the Grammys is absolutely true. It was voted the pop album of the year, the best popular female vocal performance, the best album cover, the best engineering, and then I think the fifth Grammy went to Andy Wiswell, who was the artist and repertoire guy behind the session itself. So 5 Grammys, never out of print, every conceivable audio medium, vinyl to tape to disc to streaming. You can't go wrong.
But you don't need the signed album from the archives to listen. As John says,
this album is your front row seat to Judy at Carnegie Hall. Put it on, rev it up loud, and just let it wash over you.
You've been listening to If This Hall Could Talk, a podcast from Carnegie Hall, where we take you on a journey through some of the most iconic pieces in our archives, the objects that set the foundation for what the Hall is today. For images of the artifacts and more information on Carnegie Hall's Rose Archives, please visit carnegiehall.org/history. Many thanks to Clive Gillinson and the dedicated staff of Carnegie Hall, as well as guest John Fricke. If This Hall Could Talk is produced by Sound Made Public, with Tanya Katenjian, Philip Wood, Emma Vecchione, Sarah Conlisk, Alessandro Santoro, and Jeremiah Moore. Lead funding for the digital collections of the Carnegie Hall Susan W. Rose Archives has been generously provided by Carnegie Corporation of New York, Susan and Elihu Rose Foundation, and Mellon Foundation, with additional support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Film Preservation Foundation, and the Metropolitan New York Library Council. Our show is distributed by WQXR. We'd like to thank our partners there, including Ed Yim and Elizabeth Nunemaker. To listen to the full season, subscribe to If This Hall Could Talk wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to support the show by sharing it with your friends and leaving us a review and a rating on your favorite podcast platform. And if you happen to come across some special artifact from the history of Carnegie Hall, let us know. You can reach us at ifthisHallCouldTalk@carnegiehall.org. We are always on the lookout. Thanks for listening. I'm Jessica Vosk.